There is this really sensational, widely circulated belief out there, and it's that the luxurious, highly sought-after Moroccan argan oil, the stuff you might use in your hair or on your skin,
Yeah.
is actually pressed from nuts harvested directly from the dung of tree-climbing goats.
Right, the infamous goat poop myth.
Exactly. But today, we are firmly promising you that we are going to debunk this bizarre internet fable. We're going to reveal a truth that is, honestly, far more extraordinary.
Yeah, it's a myth that has completely taken on a life of its own. I mean, it's repeated in articles, it's shared in viral videos, and accepted as absolute fact by millions of consumers. But the biological and historical reality is just so much richer.
It really is. So if you have a bottle of argan oil in your bathroom right now, the odds are pretty high that its origin story, like the one you've been told or seen online, is a complete fabrication.
Yeah, almost certainly.
So, operating as fascinated food historians today, we're doing a deep dive into a really curated stack of sources. We've got ecological studies by the Doñana Biological Station in Spain, botanical histories from 13th century scholars, and even some first-hand agricultural accounts from the Souss-Massa region of Morocco.
And our mission here is to untangle the biological reality behind Morocco's famous tree-climbing goats from that goat poop myth. We really want to examine the authentic, painstaking handcraft of the Amaza or Berber women's cooperatives who actually produce this oil.
Right.
And, we need to dissect the complex ecological and economic forces that kind of govern the modern Argan industry today. Because in a world where viral internet myths dictate what we believe about the products we consume, understanding the true origin reveals a profound story. It's about ecological balance, female empowerment, and this ancient culinary heritage.
Absolutely. And I think we have to start with the visual, because the visual that kicks off this whole myth is entirely real. That's a huge part of why the narrative is so sticky.
Oh, for sure. Seeing is believing, right?
Yeah. If you drive through the arid landscapes of southwestern Morocco, specifically around places like Essaouira, Agadir, and Targon, you will actually see domesticated Barbary goats standing up to 30 feet, which is about 10 meters high in the thorny branches of the Argania spinosa tree.
Which is just a wild thing to see. And it happens because the environment absolutely demands it. I mean, this region suffers from severe, prolonged droughts.
So the ground level vegetation is just gone.
Exactly. It's incredibly sparse.
Mm.
So during the dry autumn season, these goats will spend up to 75% of their foraging time grazing in the treetops, simply because the terrestrial food sources have been entirely exhausted.
Wow, 75%.
Yeah. The argan tree is often literally the only living greenery left in the landscape.
And what they're up there looking for is the pulpy argan fruit.
Yeah.
Looking at the botanical cross-sections in the sources, it resembles a giant green olive. The goats are really just after that fleshy outer pulp.
Right, the pulp is the prize for them. But inside that pulpy fruit is the argan seed. And that seed is massive.
Yeah, when I was reviewing that Doñana Biological Station paper, the measurements of these seeds immediately flagged the biological impossibility of the whole internet myth.
Oh, definitely. The Spanish ecologists measuring this phenomenon documented that these seeds are up to 22 millimeters, so nearly an inch wide.
That's huge for a goat.
It is. The anatomy of the goat's digestive tract simply isn't built to process objects of that density and diameter. Passing a 22 millimeter rock-hard shell all the way through a goat's lower intestinal tract and sphincter would be excruciatingly painful.
If not completely obstructive, right? Like a total blockage.
Precisely. It's a biological dead end.
I was actually trying to think of how to map the goat's actual digestive process to something we recognize. And it operates essentially like a bizarre biological washing machine.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, because it expertly sorts the delicate laundry from the heavy debris. It separates the soft food pulp from the water and nutrients without ever sending the hardest, largest parts down the drain into the lower intestines.
Yeah, that sorting process all happens in the rumen. Because goats are ruminants, meaning they have this specialized multi-chambered stomach.
Right.
So when a goat eats the argan fruit, it actually swallows it whole. The fruit descends into that first stomach chamber, the rumen, where it just sits in a warm microbial bath.
Like a fermentation tank.
Exactly like that.
Oh.
This fermentation process softens the tough outer skin and really begins breaking down the fleshy pulp.
But because it's a ruminant, it eventually has to bring that material back up to chew it as cud, right?
Yeah. It regurgitates that fermented mass, it chews the softened pulp, extracting all the nutritional value it needs, but then it is left with this massive, unyielding, deeply bitter nut in its mouth.
And it can't crush it with its teeth.
No, not at all. And swallowing it again serves absolutely no nutritional purpose. So you know what it does? It just spits it out.
It just spits it out, which is so simple but completely debunks the myth. Biologists actually classify this specific mechanism as endozoochry via regurgitation, which is just a fancy way of saying it's a highly efficient form of seed dispersal.
Hmm.
The testing conducted by those ecologists shows that 71% of these ruminated, spat-out seeds remain perfectly viable.
Which is incredible for the ecosystem. The goat basically wanders away from the parent tree, ferments the fruit in its rumen, chews its cud, spits out the seed, and effectively plants a brand new generation of the Argan forest.
Right. Which totally answers the lingering question of how the manure myth started in the first place. Goats naturally defecate while they forage and chew their cud.
Yeah, they're not exactly picky about where they do their business.
Exactly. So you have these clean, spat-out seeds falling to the forest floor, naturally mixing with the goat manure that is just already lying around.
Right, just a coincidence of location.
Yeah. So early European travelers and casual observers walking through these groves, they saw argan seeds lying right in the middle of goat dung and incorrectly deduced the entire digestive journey.
They observed a spatial correlation and completely mistook it for biological causality. And because the resulting story is just so deeply unusual and kind of gross, it bypassed scientific scrutiny entirely. It just became accepted folklore.
It's the perfect viral story before the internet even existed. But there is a visual paradox in the source material that we really need to address here.
Oh, the roadside photos.
Yeah. We've established that these goats naturally climb out of desperate survival in a drought to forage. Yet, if you look at the thousands of tourist photos flooding social media, the goats aren't foraging.
No, they're not.
They are standing perfectly still in the branches, just staring blankly at the cameras, spaced out almost perfectly evenly across the tree.
Yeah, it looks entirely unnatural when you really look at it. And the environmental photojournalists investigating this, working alongside animal welfare groups like Born Free, they've uncovered a much darker reality behind those specific roadside displays.
It's pretty grim.
It is. Along the major highways outside Marrakech and Essaouira, the quote-unquote goats and trees phenomenon has been largely hijacked. Opportunistic farmers are importing goats from other regions where argan trees don't even grow.
Wait, really? They're importing them?
Yes, and they build hidden wooden platforms up in the branches of the trees by the road. They force the goats onto these platforms using repetitious conditioning. Sometimes they withhold food, and occasionally they even deploy invisible fishing wire to tether the animals in place.
Oh, wow. So they're literally tied to the tree.
Exactly. They are forced to stand completely still for hours on end in the blazing Moroccan sun while tourists pull over. And then they're charged 10 to 20 Moroccan dirhams per photograph.
Which is wild. The animal welfare reports note severe heat stress, dehydration, and joint pain from that restricted movement. The tourists are out there smiling for selfies, completely unaware that the farmers routinely have to swap the goats out halfway through the day.
Right, because the animals reach the point of physical collapse.
It's awful. But I do want to pause on the condemnation for just a second. I think we need to look at the economic reality of the Souss-Massa region. We are talking about communities suffering through intense, multi-year droughts.
Very true.
Traditional agriculture is failing. The water tables are dropping. If these local families are struggling just to put food on the table, I mean, isn't this quirky roadside tourism a necessary lifeline? I find it hard to purely vilify farmers who are just monetizing a global fascination to survive a climate crisis.
No, I completely agree. The economic desperation is undeniably real. And viewing it purely through a Western animal welfare lens really misses the systemic poverty that's driving the behavior. However, the true catastrophe isn't just the treatment of the individual goats.
Yeah, it's bigger than that.
It's the ecological mathematics of the entire situation. The global demand for the oil and the lucrative nature of those tourist traps have created this devastating paradox.
Because goats are a traditional status symbol of wealth in rural Morocco, right? So as harvesters make more money from the oil or the tourists, they invest that capital into buying more goats.
Precisely. And this massive overpopulation of goats leads to catastrophic overgrazing. We really have to look at the biology of the Argania spinosa to understand the stakes here.
Right, because it's not just a regular tree.
Not at all. This is a living fossil. It literally dates back to the Tertiary period, which is roughly 65 million years ago. It has evolved an incredibly deep root system, reaching up to 30 meters into the earth just to tap into ancient water tables.
30 meters deep. That's
Yeah.
incredible. And those roots are doing the heavy lifting of anchoring the soil. They create entire microclimates.
Mm.
The sources note that without the Argan tree, the Sahara Desert would rapidly consume the entire southwestern portion of Morocco.
Yes, it is a keystone species acting as a physical barrier against desertification.
And it is a notoriously slow-growing tree. It takes something like 7 to 15 years for a single sapling to mature and produce fruit. So when you introduce massive artificially inflated goat herds to this fragile ecosystem, they don't just eat the mature fruit. They completely devour the young seedlings. They strip the protective leaves off the mature branches.
They are effectively eating the future of the forest. They're halting the regeneration of what is a 2.5 million hectare UNESCO Arganari biosphere reserve.
So the roadside goat displays are largely this exploitative illusion, and the goats themselves are actively threatening the future of the entire forest. Which really begs the ultimate question: who is actually doing the backbreaking work to create the oil?
Right, because it sure isn't the goats.
Exactly. The source material forces a total shift away from that spectacle and into the world of genuine human artisanal craft.
And the documentation of this craft goes back centuries. The 13th century Muslim botanist and pharmacologist Ibn al-Bikar wrote extensively about the argan tree and these indigenous methods of extraction.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for generations, true argan oil has been produced almost exclusively by the indigenous Amazi women of the South region.
And the sheer scale of the physical labor required is just staggering. To produce just a single liter of pure argan oil, it takes 30 kilograms of raw fruit.
Which is a huge amount of fruit.
To visualize that, 30 kilograms is the entire annual harvest of 6 to 7 mature argan trees.
Wow.
And to convert that raw fruit into 1 liter of oil takes roughly 12 to 20 hours of intense, focused manual labor.
Yeah, the process is incredibly demanding. Between June and September, the ripe fruits fall to the ground naturally. The Amazi women collect them and spread them out to sun-dry on large mats or flat rocks for several weeks.
And that dries out the pulp, right?
Exactly. This solar drying process desiccates the fleshy outer pulp until it becomes completely brittle. The women then peel away this hardened pulp, finally revealing the argan nut inside.
And getting inside that nut is basically a biomechanical nightmare. Cracking the argan nut requires the precision and force of cracking a bank safe. You can't just smash it with a hammer.
No, it would destroy everything inside.
Exactly. The women sit in circles on the ground. They place each individual nut vertically on a flat base stone. Then they strike the top of the nut with a specially shaped second stone.
And we have to emphasize, the argan shell is exponentially harder than a hazelnut or an almond. It is rock hard. But the kernel inside, which actually contains the oil, is incredibly delicate.
Right.
If a woman strikes the shell with even a fraction too much force, the shell shatters inward and completely pulverizes the oil-rich kernel into this useless mash mixed with hard shell fragments.
It is a highly specialized motor skill passed down through generations. Even a seasoned expert can only crack about 2 to 3 kilograms of nuts per hour.
Just think about that math. It's incredibly slow work.
Yeah. And once they finally extract the intact kernels, the ancestral method kind of diverges from modern production. Traditionally, the women take those kernels and grind them in a stone rotary mill called an ezerg.
Right. The ezerg uses shear friction to crush the kernels into a thick brown paste. The women then take this paste and knead it by hand for 20 to 40 minutes.
Just continuously kneading it.
Yeah. And during this kneading process, they gradually add warm water. The water acts as a solvent, altering the emulsion. It basically binds with the solid plant matter, forcing the hydrophobic pure oil to separate and rise to the surface where it can be skimmed off.
But the chemistry of that ancestral method introduces a major flaw when we talk about exporting the oil or keeping it on a shelf for months. Adding water initiates a process of degradation.
Right. Water is the enemy of shelf life.
Exactly. Residual moisture left in the oil accelerates lipid oxidation. The water essentially encourages the hydrolysis of the triglycerides, causing the oil to go rancid much faster.
Which is exactly why the modern argan industry, specifically the really reputable cooperatives, had to evolve. They still rely entirely on the women for the hand cracking.
Because machines still can't do it.
No. To this day, no mechanical engineering firm has managed to invent a machine that can reliably crack the oddly shaped, incredibly hard argan shell without destroying the kernel inside. It still requires human hands.
But once the hand cracking is done, the highest quality cooperatives abandon the stone mill and the water. They feed the kernels into stainless steel mechanical cold presses instead.
Right. These machines apply massive mechanical pressure without any heat. Keeping the friction temperature below 50 degrees Celsius is critical to protecting the delicate tocopherols, the vitamin E, and the essential fatty acids.
And because it's a dry press that uses zero water, the yield is incredibly efficient.
Right. Vastly more efficient. It extracts 30 to 50% more oil from the exact same volume of kernels compared to the hand kneading method. Plus, the lack of moisture vastly extends the shelf life.
Which brings us to a massive tension in the whole narrative. We are looking at a product that demands 20 hours of manual labor per liter, and it fuels a multi-billion-dollar global cosmetics industry.
Oh, absolutely.
Argan oil is the star ingredient in high-end shampoos, face creams, and serums in every major city on Earth. So the question is, how much of that global wealth actually reaches the rural Amezi women sitting on the ground with those cracking stones?
Well, if we look at the economic data prior to the late 1990s, the answer is horrifyingly bleak.
Yeah.
Almost none of the wealth reached the villages. The industry was controlled by foreign investors and middlemen who industrialized the final extraction and bottling processes in large coastal cities like Casablanca.
They essentially treated the Amezi women as nothing more than a cheap source of raw materials. The women would do all the backbreaking work of hand cracking the nuts, and the middlemen would buy the extracted kernels for pennies on the dollar, just taking all the profit margins for themselves in the final sale.
And the socioeconomic revolution that changed this dynamic was spearheaded by Professor Zubida Sharif of Mohammed V University in Rabat.
She is such a pivotal figure in this story.
She really is. Her research indicated that the Argan forest was disappearing at an alarming rate, largely because the local population had absolutely no economic incentive to protect the trees.
Right. If the women were making a living wage from the argan nuts, the families would chop the ancient trees down for firewood. Or they'd clear the land for more lucrative, water-intensive crops.
Exactly. Professor Sharif realized that ecological conservation required economic empowerment. The women had to own the means of production.
Makes total sense.
So she fought immense social and economic resistance to champion the creation of community-owned, women-led cooperatives.
She secured funding from international NGOs to bring the cold-press machinery directly to the rural villages. She provided business administration training, taught the women how to navigate organic certifications, and completely eliminated the Casablanca middlemen.
It was a total paradigm shift. The women transitioned from selling cheap raw kernels to collectively owning and exporting the final high-value oil.
And the economic data on this shift is remarkable. Today, there are over 100 authentic women's cooperatives operating in the Sauce region. If you purchase oil directly from a genuine cooperative, a liter of cosmetic oil runs roughly 300 Moroccan dirhams.
Right.
And the structural design of these co-ops ensures that 60 to 70% of that revenue goes straight to the women who produced it.
And the economic multiplier effect has totally transformed the region. Studies tracking cooperative members show their incomes increased by more than 10 times.
10 times, that's life-changing.
It truly is. But the cooperative model also pools a percentage of the profits to fund broader community infrastructure.
Yeah, they use the pooled funds to hire teachers for adult literacy programs, bringing education to women who were historically denied schooling. They fund local healthcare access and buy school supplies for their children.
And it works. Public health data over the last 2 decades shows direct, measurable improvements in maternal health and child nutrition in the villages surrounding these co-ops.
But of course, the massive success of the cooperative model has inevitably spawned a predatory counter-movement. We have to look at the rise of what the sources call ghost cooperatives.
Ah, yes, the ghost co-ops. Unscrupulous local businessmen recognize that Western tourists specifically want to buy from women's co-ops, so they set up fake fronts along the major tourist routes.
Right. You pull over a tour bus, walk into a building plastered with signs claiming to be an authentic women's cooperative. But it is often owned and staffed entirely by men, while a few women are paid meager daily wages to sit near the entrance, cracking nuts purely as a theatrical display for the tourists.
It's all just a facade. Behind closed doors, these ghost cooperatives are highly exploitative, and the chemistry of their product actually reveals their cut-rate methods.
Because these fake co-ops are often the primary buyers of the goat-digested nuts we discussed earlier.
Exactly. Because the goat has already done the work of stripping away the fleshy pulp and softening the shell in its rumen, it saves the illicit operations a massive amount of labor time.
But using a nut that is fermented inside a goat's stomach introduces a catastrophic flaw. The kernel absorbs the deep, putrid scent of the animal's digestive tract.
It smells exactly as bad as you think it would.
Yeah. So to make the resulting oil remotely palatable for the cosmetic market, these ghost cooperatives have to steam deodorize it.
They blast the extracted oil with extreme heat to strip the volatile organic compounds causing the odor. But doing so completely ruins the chemical integrity of the oil.
Right, because heat is the enemy.
Exactly. The heat destroys the delicate tocopherols, it breaks down the squalene, and it oxidizes the essential fatty acids. You end up paying luxury prices for a dead, nutritionally void oil simply because it comes in a pretty bottle.
Now that we understand the profound human effort and the chemical vulnerabilities involved in making the genuine article, we really need to look at how this oil is actually used. Argan oil serves two entirely distinct markets, the kitchen and the vanity.
And treating them interchangeably is a massive mistake.
I view culinary argan oil kind of like an incredibly delicate, high-end truffle oil. It is a finishing touch meant to elevate a completed dish. You absolutely never use it to fry an egg or sauté vegetables.
No, never. Applying direct cooking heat to culinary argan oil destroys its flavor profile and turns it deeply bitter. The fundamental difference between cosmetic and culinary oil actually occurs right after the cracking stage.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. Cosmetic oil is pressed from raw, unroasted kernels. It yields a pale golden liquid with only a very faint, raw, nutty scent. And the lipid profile of high-quality cosmetic oil allows it to absorb completely into human skin in under 30 seconds, leaving no greasy residue.
But for the culinary oil, the amazing women take the extracted kernels and lightly roast them over a clay fire before pressing,
Right, which triggers the Maillard reaction.
like browning a steak.
Exactly. The amino acids and reducing sugars react, creating a deep, dark amber color and a very robust, toasted aroma. It's designed to be drizzled over couscous, whisked into salad dressings, or simply served as a dip for fresh bread.
And the pinnacle of culinary argan use in the meze culture is a dish called amlou. Western marketing often lazily brands it as Berber Nutella, but its nutritional profile and cultural weight are far more significant than that.
Much more significant. The traditional recipe requires grinding 250 grams of heavily roasted almonds into a fine paste, slowly emulsifying it with roughly 100 milliliters of the dark culinary argan oil, and then sweetening the whole mixture with raw local honey.
It creates this hyper-dense, high-energy taste. Historically, because the oil required such intense labor to produce, amlou was never just an everyday breakfast food. It was a symbol of extreme hospitality and abundance, reserved almost exclusively for honored guests, religious holidays, and wedding celebrations.
It's truly a luxury food. So the critical question for the consumer navigating this complex global market is how to spot the fakes. Whether you are browsing a souk in Marrakech or shopping online, the sources provide clear chemical and economic indicators to identify fraudulent oil.
The first barrier is just basic economics. If you see a bottle of argan oil retailing for under 150 Moroccan dirhams, which is roughly $15 per liter, you can just walk away immediately.
Yeah, the math just doesn't work.
It is mathematically impossible to ethically source 30 kilograms of fruit and pay a woman for 20 hours of manual labor at that price point. Anything below that threshold is guaranteed to be cut with cheap industrial fillers like soybean or sunflower oil.
And the sensory profile is equally revealing. If you apply cosmetic argan oil to the back of your hand and it feels thick, sticky, or remains greasy after a minute, the lipid structure is wrong. It has been adulterated.
What about the smell?
Well, if it carries a sharp chemical tang or a rancid sour smell, it is either spoiled from water extraction or heavily processed. It should smell incredibly faint and fresh.
And finally, you have to look at the packaging, which really comes down to photooxidation. UV light is highly destructive to the essential fatty acids in argan oil. It initiates a free radical chain reaction that degrades the oil incredibly fast.
Genuine producers understand this chemistry perfectly. They will only package their oil in dark amber glass, cobalt glass, or completely opaque container.
So no clear plastic.
Never. If you see argan oil sitting on a shelf in a clear plastic bottle absorbing fluorescent or natural light, you are looking at a tourist trap product with a ruined shelf life.
So if you look at the beauty products in your own home that claim to feature argan oil, you now have a real framework to investigate them. You can question the price point, the packaging, and the supply chain.
Exactly. Are you supporting a massive industrial operation relying on middlemen, a ghost cooperative exploiting cheap labor, or an authentic women-owned enterprise in the South region?
Engaging with the origin of the product completely recontextualizes what it actually is. It ceases to be just a moisturizer on your shelf. It becomes the end result of a 65 million-year-old ecological chain, sustained by the biomechanics of native wildlife and unlocked by the ancestral knowledge and sheer physical endurance of indigenous women.
Which really returns us to the hook that started this entire deep dive, the sensational myth of the goat poop oil. That story travels around the globe effortlessly.
It dominates the algorithms because it's bizarre, it's slightly gross, and it makes for a highly clickable viral headline. It is essentially the perfect modern meme.
But the meme actively erases the humans in the story. The true biological and historical reality is this elegant ecological partnership. You have goats naturally regenerating an ancient forest by spitting out seeds, operating alongside a profound social revolution where women leverage their ancestral heritage to secure economic independence.
And literally transform the public health of their communities.
Exactly.
The truth requires a bit more time to understand, obviously, but it is infinitely more complex, resilient, and human than the internet myth.
It really is, and it leaves us with a broader question to consider long after this deep dive ends. If the global narrative surrounding an industry as massive as argan oil can be so easily distorted by a simplified, funny internet rumor, what other quirky facts about our everyday products are currently masking a deep, ancient human heritage?
That's a fascinating thought.
Right. We challenge you to investigate the true origins of the items you take for granted every day. You might just find a story as extraordinary as the women of the Argan forest.